Mike Kunkel with Profit Team Consulting had a little technical difficulty starting off as my first Facebook Live. Sorry about that. But kind of going through as our role in the consulting industry, we spend a lot of time looking at a lot of numbers, working with quite a few facilities, and get a very unique perspective industry. So, with that being said, kind of spend a few very bright and very exciting times to be in the used auto parts business. Kind of discussing the why is that the case? Well, first for throughout history, the demand has always been strong for our product. We were very nervous going into the pandemic about what was going to happen. Was there going to still be the same type demand on our product? And what we found through the pandemic is most of us did quite well. Sales have been very good. Sales have been, relatively consistent. And then over the last few months, wintertime has hit. So with winter, that is always tends to be a shot in the arm for a couple of reasons. You know, the accident rate goes up because of the bad weather. Bad weather has a tendency, or the cold weather has a tendency of causing some of the mechanical failures and allows things to go on. And while January, February were short months, March is not, and we had some really, really crappy weather through February that caused quite a few of the distribution networks that are out there to miss some days worth of time. Some facilities were literally closed for a couple of days. Here in Texas, there were quite a few that didn't have power for a while. Those kind of hurt the sales month, but in the grand scope of things, those cars are still going to be fixed. Those parts sales will be pushed into March, and March looks really strong. You also kind of talk in with the electronic location of parts. An ELP is the term that we're liking to uh, to call that, has really changed a lot of how we sell parts. We are dealing with a much more informed customer than we've ever done before. The salespeople that we talk to continue to tell us that, upwards of 70% of the time that the customer is calling, they're already aware of price and availability on the part. That's way different than, 20, 25 years ago when every phone call started the same way with do you have. Now the calls start with you show to have. It's a different way of doing that. Now, the fact that we're dealing with a more informed customer, there's good and bad to that. The good is we're getting our parts out in front of the customer more easily. The bad is we speak Hollander. It's a very, very unique language that's not very common in the world. When we hire a new salesperson, the last thing, the most complicated thing that they really learn how to do is accurately, properly identify and look up the part. But somehow or another, we have outsiders that are electronically accessing our inventory and making those same selections. It becomes different. And how do you explain to the customer, the information that we need to know in order to capitalize on doing that? But all of those things do create additional opportunity for each and every one of us to sell more parts and ultimately and even potentially dig deeper into each vehicle as we attempt to sell more parts off of the car. The one thing that the pandemic has done is it will change supply lines and how supply production lines operate. We went through something similar to this when we had the tsunami a number of years back. We went from a highly interchangeable on certain components to the car manufacturers using multiple choices for things to limit their ability or their risk in supply line failures. Well, now with the fact that supply lines are not going to be running at maximum efficiency for a while will mean that retooling the supply line is going to be more costly and ineffective and inefficient. So they're going to ultimately have to go to some more interchangeable items on there. So what does that do to us? Once again, it comes back to how do we display our product to the customer and then come back. The salvage business is going to continue to be numbers driven. It's already extremely numbers driven. It's going to be even more and more numbers driven as we continue to move forward. The grinding away at buying of cars is extremely time consuming, extremely important to the business. We have always said for years and years that the money is made on the buy side, and that is still true. It's very competitive to buy cars, and the amount of information, the amount of data that's available to us, the schools of thought on how to buy a car, all of those things are extremely fascinating in what everybody is doing and trying to look at and ultimately come up with the proper price point to bring the car into the system. Threats that are out there. Miles driven for 2020 down by 13% in the United States. We still drove, I'm not even really sure how you properly say this number, but 2,829 billion less miles driven in 2020 than 2019. That equates to 13%. The Northeast has been hit harder in the mileage driven than the rest of the country. Their miles driven is down by 15.2%. The area identified as Gulf South is down by 5.4%. So we need miles to be driven in order for accidents to occur and in order for mechanical parts to fail. So the fact that the miles being driven are down long term could potentially impact the number of days that it takes for us to turn our product. We may have to sit on some items a little bit longer in some cases, but as long as people are still traveling, vehicles are still going to be breaking down. Is very minor. We always discuss electrical cars, but the storms throughout the country over the last several weeks have kind of shown that the power grid's not ready for electric cars, which means that the auto recycler should be rejoicing these bad weather because it's a lot of security that we had, going back. So some of the constants in the industry is the pressure to buy, right? There's always a tremendous amount of pressure to buy salvage. So we would like to uh, remind everybody that the inventory is king. Depletion of inventory long term is not good. So there's constant pressure to buy. And then there is always pressure on the sales staff for qualifying the customer. As an electronically located part, the ELP that we mentioned continues to happen, the salespeople need to understand and qualify the customer significantly better than what they have in the past. And a very legitimate question for managers and owners to ask a salesperson is how can we have a part available and a qualified customer and not convert the customer? That is a huge portion of what we're doing is spending a lot of wasted time and effort pitching a product to a non-qualified customer and shortcutting a qualified customer but not giving them the proper time and attention it takes to sell the part with the value proposition, the warranty explanation, finding out their story. So I really do appreciate everybody taking a few minutes out of their day to listen to my Facebook Live broadcast. And that's really been a fun thing for me. And hopefully you'll tune in next week for Lee Werman to discuss. So thank you all very much. Appreciate your time. Have a great day.